Hi gardeners, I hope you're having a really nice autumn. Today I want to show you something which verges on rewilding. I'm here in our wildflower meadow, which we started almost 4 years ago when we moved in. And we created this meadow simply by leaving the grass to grow long over summer. I've made quite a few videos on this over the last year or so check them out if you haven't already. But as my understanding of wild ecosystems has developed, I've decided that I want to make some adjustments to our wildflower meadow, which I'm going to show you in this video. So in my talk on gardening for wildlife, I explain that while we used to think that prehistoric Britain was covered by dense woodland with patches of meadow, thanks to the work of people like Franz Vera, many of us think that it may have been a much more open canopy woodland. In other words, lots of trees, but with enough space between them to allow light to reach the ground, which enables grass growth, floral diversity, and even large herbivores. In fact, it would be these herbivores that would feed on young tree saplings and prevent dense closed canopy woodland from forming. Now, when we first moved in, I planted some apple trees, but I want to expand on that idea and plant some more trees, and that's what I'm doing today. Now, tree choice is going to be very important here. We only have a small garden and we don't want the trees to completely outshade the grasses and wildflowers. We want to increase biodiversity, not reduce it. Now, logic would say that we should only plant small trees because we have a small garden, but this can be quite limiting because many of the trees that support the most wildlife, such as oak trees, are really big when mature. But there's another approach, which is to plant trees that can tolerate coppicing. Coppicing is a technique that humans have been using for thousands of years to produce timber. It simply means cutting trees to the ground every few years. It might be every year or two for thin wispy growth for plant supports, or every 20 years, or maybe even 100 years for bigger projects. By selecting trees that can tolerate coppicing, whenever we think the grass and wildflowers are at risk of getting outshaded by the trees, we can simply cut the trees back to the ground and allow them to regrow for a few more years. I went to our local garden centre yesterday and bought some bare root saplings intended to be used as hedging plants. I got these for £2.50 each, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than buying pot-grown plants. I chose a mixture of hazel and field maple, but to be honest, most of our native trees tolerate coppicing and would work well. That's the result of trees which evolved in a landscape which contained large herbivores that would eat their saplings. Planting is simple. Dig a small hole, plant your trees, and water them. Small trees like hazel, hawthorn, and field maple can be planted every few metres at irregular intervals. That might mean planting some right next to each other, and it might mean leaving other areas without trees. We want to make this feel natural, and irregular spacing is going to really help to create that naturalistic feel. If you have a large area, bigger trees like oaks and limes can be planted every 20 to 50 metres and can be allowed to reach maturity. Or you could plant them closely, like we did with the smaller trees, and coppice them every now and then. Here's an oak sapling that I dug up and planted earlier in the year, and I'll probably end up coppicing this in 10 years' time or so, because our garden isn't especially big. So if you have a wildflower meadow, it's worth considering whether you could plant some trees in it and take your rewilding mission to the next level.